What if the most authentic version of you isn't the one everyone sees, but the one no one ever will? What if silence, rather than visibility, is where your true power lives? Have you ever wondered why some people suddenly stop posting, stop showing, stop performing, yet somehow their presence feels stronger than ever? Maybe they didn't disappear. Maybe they finally found themselves. There is a certain kind of silence that speaks louder than noise. A silence that doesn't crave to be filled, doesn't hunger for validation, and doesn't tremble under the weight of being unseen. It's the silence of those who have outgrown the need to constantly show themselves to the world. Not because they are hiding, but because they've realized something sacred. Some things lose their meaning when exposed too often to the light of other people's opinions. You see, in a world where everyone is trying so desperately to be heard, the rare soul who remains quiet becomes magnetic. Their stillness draws you in, not through effort, but through presence. They are not hiding from the world, they are simply existing within it, unshaken, unedited, unperformed. And that stillness is not emptiness, it's fullness contained, it's peace wrapped in mystery. When a person no longer feels the need to post, to prove, to explain, they step into a higher form of awareness. They begin to understand that life is not a performance to be displayed, it is an experience to be lived. Every moment they choose not to share is a sacred act of self-respect. Because they know, deep within, that the most beautiful parts of their existence are not meant to be consumed, they are meant to be cherished. And isn't that what true presence is? To live so completely in a moment that you forget to capture it. To feel the sunlight on your face and not think about how it looks, but how it feels. To laugh not for the camera, but because your heart truly found something worth laughing about. The one who doesn't post often is not disconnected. They are deeply connected to themselves, to the now, to the subtle pulse of life that moves beyond screens. They've discovered that what is real doesn't need to be witnessed to exist. It simply is. There is a quiet wisdom in their restraint. While others are constantly broadcasting their every joy, every struggle, every meal, every angle of their face, they have realized that sharing less doesn't make life smaller. It makes it deeper. In that silence, they find a clarity that the noise can never offer. And there's something profoundly beautiful about mystery. We live in a time when everyone feels entitled to know everything about everyone. But mystery, real mystery, has become rare. And with rarity comes value. The quiet ones remind us that not everything should be seen, not everything should be shared. Some chapters of your story are meant to be read only by you. This mystery is not manipulation, it's preservation. It is the act of keeping certain parts of your soul untouched by the eyes of strangers. It's the refusal to let your essence become public property. It's the understanding that your depth loses its sacredness when constantly measured by the shallow waves of public opinion. The person who chooses not to post often operates from a different frequency. Their worth isn't tied to attention, and their happiness doesn't need an audience. They live without the constant need to translate their existence into proof. They've stopped confusing visibility with value, because somewhere along the way, they learned that peace doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need applause. It just is. And when you no longer live for the camera, life begins to feel alive again. You start to taste your food instead of photographing it. You start to see the beauty of the sunset without thinking of captions. You begin to breathe more fully, love more quietly, and see more deeply. This is the art of energy conservation. The understanding that every act of exposure costs something, your focus, your emotion, your time. When you post, you open yourself to the interpretations of others. Their opinions ripple into your mind, their projections tint your perspective, and slowly, you start living not for yourself, but for the version of you that others approve of. But when you conserve your energy, when you choose not to give every part of yourself away, you begin to glow differently. Your peace becomes richer, your intuition sharper. You begin to protect what truly matters, your mind, your spirit, your essence. Energy, once scattered, takes time to gather. And those who are intentional about where they place it are the ones who begin to see the world with clearer eyes. They stop rushing to share every experience. Instead, they allow it to settle within them, to shape them, to teach them. In this quiet way of living, there is a kind of invisible strength, the strength of self-containment, the strength of being at ease with being unseen, the strength of knowing that your life's worth cannot be measured in views, likes, or comments, but in peace, growth, and authenticity. And perhaps that is the greatest form of confidence, to walk through this world unseen and still feel complete, to live a life so full of meaning that you no longer need to announce it, to be at peace in the background while the rest of the world fights for the spotlight. This silence is not absence, it is mastery. It is the realization that what is sacred cannot be digitized. It is a gentle rebellion against a culture that mistakes noise for importance. It's a return to the truth that life's most powerful moments often happen in private, in the spaces no one ever sees, but where everything real begins to grow. So, when someone doesn't post their photo, it doesn't mean they're hiding from the world. It might mean they've found the world within themselves. They've learned that the most meaningful connections aren't built through screens, but through presence. And they've discovered that when you stop needing to be seen, you finally start to see. Because peace doesn't live in exposure, it lives in understanding. And the quiet ones understand this. Your soul was never meant to be content. It was meant to be consciousness. Privacy is a sacred language, spoken softly by those who have learned that peace cannot survive in the hands of everyone. To live privately is not to live secretly. It is to live intentionally. It is to understand that not every truth deserves an audience, not every moment requires validation, and not every emotion is meant to be translated into words or images for others to consume. In a world where exposure has become the new currency, privacy is a rare form of wealth. It is the art of choosing who has the privilege of seeing your soul. There comes a point when you begin to realize that not everyone looking at you is truly seeing you. Many only see reflections of their own insecurities, their own comparisons, their own expectations projected upon your life. So you stop offering pieces of yourself to those who only look, but never look deeply. You begin to protect your stories like sacred scripture. You stop announcing every dream before it's rooted. You stop posting every joy before it's stable. You stop explaining your pain before it's healed, because you understand when you expose too early, you invite distortion. Privacy becomes your spiritual boundary. It is not an act of fear. It is an act of love. You are loving yourself enough to create a sacred distance between what is real and what is public, between your truth and their perception. And it's in that distance that peace breathes again. You begin to feel whole, not because the world knows your story, but because you know your story. You begin to glow differently, because your energy is no longer scattered across timelines or drained by the constant need to perform your existence. The one who learns to honor privacy learns to honor presence. Instead of reaching for a phone when the light hits perfectly, they allow themselves to feel it. Instead of recording every gathering, they sit in it, listening to laughter, watching the way love moves through the room. They realize that some beauty only exists in the living, not the capturing. Some magic disappears the moment you try to make it permanent. And this is where the detox from validation begins, because validation, subtle, seductive, and addictive, feeds on your need to be seen. It whispers, share more, prove more, show them. And every time you listen, you hand away a small piece of your power. The approval feels good, yes, but it fades faster than it arrives. You refresh the screen, seeking more, forgetting that the well you drink from is shallow. It takes courage to unplug from this cycle, to look at your reflection not through filters, but through truth, to understand that you do not need applause to exist. You do not need reaction to feel real. The silence that follows your absence from the digital crowd may feel uncomfortable at first, but then something miraculous happens. You begin to hear your own voice again. There's an intoxicating kind of freedom in not waiting for approval. You start to see that validation was never love. It was distraction. It was a mirage that kept you chasing shadows instead of standing still in your own light. And when you let go of that chase, when you stop posting for reaction, you start creating from intention. You start living for yourself. That is when the mind begins to heal. The constant anxiety of comparison dissolves. You no longer measure your worth against others' highlight reels. You realize that everyone is curating their lives, just as you once did. And suddenly, you stop competing. You start connecting, not through pixels, but through presence. Not through posts, but through purpose. The more you disconnect from validation, the more sensitive you become to the richness of real life. You start noticing textures again, the warmth of a cup between your hands, the rhythm of footsteps on quiet streets, the way your breath sounds in the morning light. You begin to feel life again, not as a performance, but as an intimate conversation between your soul and existence itself. And this shift awakens a deeper form of observation, because those who no longer rush to share are often the ones who have learned to see. They are the quiet watchers of life. They are not absent from the world, they are immersed in it. They watch the play of sunlight through leaves. They notice how people speak when they are nervous, how eyes shift when hearts are unguarded. Their silence is full of perception. They see the subtleties others miss because their attention is undivided. When you are no longer living for the lens, you begin to perceive truth without distortion. You start to notice the sacred details, the pauses in a friend's voice, the sadness behind a stranger's smile, the language of moments that words cannot translate. Life becomes poetry again. And perhaps that is what many have forgotten, that to live deeply, you must slow down. You must stop documenting and start dwelling. You must let moments pass through you instead of through your camera. The one who posts less is not disconnected. They are profoundly connected to stillness, to observation, to the quiet miracle of being. There is an art to watching without wanting to capture. It requires humility to accept that not every beauty belongs to you and not every truth needs to be owned. It requires trust to believe that even if no one sees it, the moment still has meaning, and it requires love to honor life enough to experience it fully, even if you cannot prove it happened. This way of seeing the world nurtures empathy. When you slow down enough to truly observe, you begin to understand. You see that behind every loud post there might be loneliness. Behind every smile, a silent prayer. Behind every success, a mountain of unspoken struggle. And you realize that we are all just trying to be seen, understood, remembered. But the more deeply you understand this, the less you crave it for yourself. You begin to find comfort in anonymity, because there's something sacred about being unknown. The more invisible you become to the crowd, the more visible you become to your own soul. You stop needing to perform your worth, and you start living it. The less you show, the more you feel. The less you speak, the more you hear. And simplicity, you rediscover a kind of power that cannot be measured in engagement or reach. It can only be felt in the quiet chambers of your heart. The beauty of this inner transformation is that it doesn't make you antisocial, it makes you authentic. You can still share, but now you share with discernment. You speak when your heart is full, not when your ego is empty. You post not to prove, but to express. You no longer seek attention. You offer value. And that is when your voice begins to carry weight. Because when you detach from validation, everything you do becomes rooted in peace. You no longer need to be seen to feel seen. You no longer need applause to feel alive. Your energy is no longer leaking through the cracks of comparison or competition. You become whole again. And in that wholeness, you return to the essence of living, to simply be, to breathe without broadcasting, to love without announcing, to grow without documenting, to exist in the quiet glory of your own becoming. Privacy taught you respect, detachment from validation taught you freedom, and observation taught you awareness. Together, they form a triad of inner wisdom, a silent power that allows you to walk through life untouched by the chaos of noise. You move differently now, not faster, not louder, but lighter. You begin to realize that the greatest gift you can offer yourself is not attention, but alignment, to live in harmony with your soul, rather than the world's expectations. To share not for recognition, but for resonance. To know that your value was never meant to be measured. It was meant to be felt. So, when you choose privacy, you are not withdrawing, you are returning. When you let go of validation, you are not losing, you are liberating. When you live as an observer, you are not detached, you are deeply engaged with life in its purest form. And maybe that is the real essence of peace, to exist quietly, fully and freely. To carry your joy within you like a hidden flame, needing no witness to prove that it burns. To know that your life has meaning not because it is seen, but because it is lived. Perception is a fragile mirror. It doesn't always reflect truth. It often reflects projection. The moment you share yourself with the world, you become subject to interpretation. People will see you not as you are, but as they are. And their judgments will echo their own wounds, their praise will reflect their own ideals, and their envy will expose their own insecurities. To exist in the open, therefore, is to risk distortion. And there are souls who sense this deeply. They understand that when too many eyes gaze upon a single truth, it begins to fragment. The light bends, the meaning shifts, and the essence gets lost in translation. So, they choose to withdraw, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. They realize that their peace is too precious to be filtered through the noise of misunderstanding. They'd rather be known by a few who see their depth than seen by many who only glance at their surface. They don't resist connection, they simply value alignment. You might notice this kind of person. They speak less, post less, explain less. Not because they lack words, but because they know words often fail to hold what the heart truly means. They are content to let their silence speak for them, because silence, in its own sacred way, cannot be misquoted. And in that stillness, they find freedom. When you stop craving to be understood by everyone, you begin to understand yourself more deeply. You stop seeking mirrors in others, and you start becoming the mirror you need. The reflections that once defined you, likes, comments, compliments, fade into irrelevance. What remains is the steady rhythm of your own truth. And this understanding gives birth to a rare kind of peace, solitude without loneliness. Because solitude is not the absence of people, it is the presence of self. It is a homecoming to your own energy, a soft exhale after years of performing. When you no longer need to prove your worth through constant exposure, your presence becomes whole again. You realize that being unseen does not mean being insignificant. In fact, the unseen roots of a tree are what hold its strength. This solitude becomes a sanctuary. It's the quiet room where your thoughts echo until they find harmony. It's the sacred pause between the world's noise and your own heart. In that stillness, clarity blooms. You start hearing the voice beneath all other voices, the one that doesn't shout but whispers gently, you are enough. Slowly, your soul begins to unclench. The pressure to perform, the exhaustion of comparison, the fear of irrelevance, they start to dissolve. Because now you see, solitude isn't something to be escaped, it's something to be embraced. It's not a void, it's a vessel. It holds the essence of becoming. There's a sacred beauty in realizing that you don't always have to be Eon. You don't always have to explain, share, or be visible. Life doesn't demand that you constantly display yourself. It asks only that you live truthfully. And the moment you allow yourself to step back, to dwell in quiet, something within you begins to realign. You start noticing that solitude sharpens perception. The less you broadcast, the more you observe. You start sensing the subtleties of existence, the way light softens in the early morning, the rhythm of your breath syncing with the rustle of leaves, the language of stillness itself. You discover that life is not meant to be rushed. It's meant to be I noticed. And in noticing, you reconnect with something sacred. The pulse of the present moment. The quiet ones, those who've embraced solitude, understand this. They've learned to live from the inside out rather than the outside in. Their energy is grounded, their awareness expanded. They can walk into a room and shift the atmosphere without saying a word, not because they demand attention, but because they embody presence. To embody presence is to be free from the constant need for attention. And that is a profound kind of liberation. It's the freedom of detachment, the freedom of not being defined by visibility, the freedom of knowing that even in your absence you still exist, you still matter, you still radiate. Detachment is not indifference, it's not apathy. It's understanding that you can love people without needing their approval. You can share moments without needing them to be recorded. You can live fully without needing to prove that you are living. When you detach from the external gaze, you return to the internal glow. You start to realize how much of your energy was once spent maintaining appearances, curating identities, and defending perceptions. And as that energy returns to you, something magical happens. You begin to feel light again. You feel whole, grounded, and alive, without the constant drain of needing to be seen. This freedom of detachment is a kind of spiritual minimalism. You start living with less noise, fewer opinions, fewer attachments, but what remains becomes pure. Your peace deepens, your thoughts sharpen, and your connection to the world becomes more authentic. You start seeing life not as a stage, but as a sacred space. And isn't it strange how invisibility can bring so much visibility? How withdrawing from the world's gaze can make you finally see the world as it is? The beauty of the quiet path is that it brings you back to simplicity. You stop performing and start being. You stop chasing validation and start embodying truth. It's in this quiet rebellion against a world obsessed with attention that you find your essence again. Because to detach from the constant need to be seen is to return to the source of who you are. You are no longer the echo of other people's opinions. You are the sound of your own soul. Freedom begins here, in the stillness, in the unposted moments. In the mornings when you wake up and decide not to perform your existence, but simply to live it. Freedom is realizing that your joy, your peace, your worth, they were never meant to be proven. They were meant to be felt. To live in this way is to reclaim your life from the marketplace of validation. To pull your spirit back from the endless scroll and say, I am enough without the noise. And in that declaration, something within you awakens. It is not arrogance, it is sovereignty. The sovereignty of a soul that no longer asks for permission to exist. The world will always tell you that to matter, you must be seen. But the truth whispers something else. What's real doesn't need to be seen to be significant. The moon doesn't announce itself, yet it moves oceans. The roots of a forest are unseen, yet they hold the earth together. The most powerful things in life are the ones that live quietly beneath the surface. So when you choose solitude, you're not withdrawing, you're deepening. When you embrace detachment, you're not losing, you're lightening. When you stop performing for perception, you begin to see life not through the eyes of others, but through the eyes of wisdom. And maybe that's the real beauty of those who post less, speak less, expose less. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's protection. Their distance isn't arrogance, it's discernment. Their solitude isn't loneliness, it's alignment. Because in the end, what the quiet ones have discovered is something most never will. Peace doesn't come from being seen. Peace comes from being be-centered. And when your center is strong enough, you no longer need to announce your presence to the world. Your energy speaks for you. That is the paradox of true power. It does not shout, it resonates. It doesn't demand to be noticed, yet it's impossible to ignore. And in a world that screams for attention, the one who lives quietly in truth becomes the loudest presence of all. Simplicity is a kind of prayer. It's not just the absence of clutter, it's the quiet return to what is essential. When a person begins to step away from the noise of exposure, from the endless sharing and constant self-display, what remains is something sacred. Life becomes lighter. Moments feel wider. The spirit begins to breathe again. This is what I call spiritual minimalism. Not the stripping away of joy, but the clearing away of everything that is not real. We live in a time where more is mistaken for meaning. More followers, more photos, more opinions. Yet, the soul doesn't thrive in excess. It thrives in alignment. And alignment begins when you stop performing and start listening. The quiet ones have learned this. They have discovered that peace doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. Their lives move slowly, intentionally, as if every choice carries the weight of reverence. They are not in a hurry to show the world who they are, because they are already at peace with knowing it themselves. There is a profound serenity that arises when you no longer feel the need to announce every detail of your existence. The more you withhold, the more energy you preserve. You begin to sense that your life has its own rhythm, its own heartbeat, one that doesn't depend on the world's applause to keep beating. You learn to protect that rhythm as something sacred. You choose what to reveal and what to hold close, like secrets between you and the divine. And in that stillness, a certain beauty begins to unfold. A beauty that is not captured, but felt. A beauty that doesn't need to be seen to be known. You begin to recognize that true richness doesn't come from visibility. It comes from depth. You stop chasing moments for display and start cherishing them for experience. You begin to understand that peace is not found in what is added, but in what is released. It's here, in this quiet spaciousness, that hidden confidence is born. It's not the kind that needs to be displayed, affirmed, or applauded. It's the kind that stands tall even in silence. Hidden confidence comes from knowing that your worth isn't determined by how often you're seen, but by how deeply you are rooted. It's the kind of strength that doesn't shout for attention, it simply exists, unwavering and complete. Confidence that is built on performance is fragile. It trembles when no one is watching. But confidence that grows in solitude is indestructible, because it's built from truth, not validation. The one who carries hidden confidence doesn't need to prove their glow. They radiate from within. Their peace speaks louder than any words they could post. They understand that quiet doesn't mean small, and stillness doesn't mean invisible. This kind of confidence isn't born overnight. It's cultivated in the unseen moments. The ones where you question your path, where you face the shadows within, where you rebuild your sense of worth, not from others' approval, but from your own understanding. It's born in those private victories, the ones no one celebrates but you. It's born when you realize that even without the spotlight, your light remains. And maybe that's the secret few ever learn. You don't need to announce your strength for it to be real. The ocean doesn't roar every moment to remind the world of its depth. It's simply a The mountain doesn't shout to prove its height. It just stands. True confidence is the same. It doesn't demand recognition. It moves quietly, humbly, unshaken by the chaos of perception. When you embody this kind of quiet confidence, you no longer chase attention. You become selective about where your energy goes. You start valuing peace over popularity, authenticity over applause. You begin to understand that the most magnetic energy you can ever possess is the energy of authenticity, the kind that doesn't need to manipulate, impress, or seek approval. It exists in truth. From that authenticity grows a new kind of boundary, one that protects not just your time, but your soul. The boundary of authenticity is a sacred one. It's the invisible line that separates what is true from what is performed. It's the choice to no longer participate in the exhaustion of pretending. When you live authentically, you realize that you don't need to exaggerate to be enough. You don't need to edit your essence to fit the mold. You simply stand in your truth, unfiltered, unapologetic, and whole. The world often rewards pretense, but your spirit rewards honesty. And when you start choosing honesty over image, you find a peace that fame can never offer. You begin to speak less, but with more purpose. You begin to show less, but with more meaning. You begin to share, not because you want attention, but because you want to connect from a place of truth. Authenticity is not loud. It's luminous. It doesn't demand that others see it, yet its presence cannot be ignored. It carries a quiet power, the kind that can't be replicated because it comes from alignment with your inner being. And this authenticity becomes your boundary. It keeps out the false, the shallow, the draining. It keeps you rooted in what matters: honesty, humility, and presence. The beautiful paradox of living authentically is that when you stop seeking to impress, you naturally begin to inspire. Because the world is starving for realness. People are tired of perfection. They crave presence. They don't want another polished story. They want something that reminds them of truth, of humanity, of grace. And so you realize that your authenticity is not just for you. It's an offering. It's the way you silently tell others, you can rest too. You can stop performing. You can just be. In this way, your stillness becomes contagious. Your simplicity becomes revolutionary. There is a moment, somewhere along the journey of withdrawing from the noise, where you stop caring about how you appear and start caring about how you feel. You stop asking, do they like me? And start asking, do I feel aligned? You begin to measure success not by visibility, but by peace. And every time you choose authenticity over approval, you strengthen your spirit's foundation. Life, in its deepest form, was never meant to be a performance. It was meant to be an expression, a sacred dance between who you are and who you are becoming. To live with spiritual minimalism, hidden confidence, and authentic boundaries is to finally return to that dance. You move through life with grace, with intention, with presence. You stop rushing to prove and start allowing yourself to be. Though, in this way of being, your energy becomes calm yet magnetic. You no longer need to force connection. It flows naturally. You no longer fear invisibility. It becomes your strength. You no longer compete, you create. And in that creation, in that still authentic living, you discover what many have forgotten, that the soul's light shines brightest when it's no longer trying to be seen. So you walk through life quietly, radiant. You speak softly, yet your words carry power. You share rarely, yet your truth resonates deeply. You exist simply, yet your presence changes the atmosphere. Because when a person is rooted in truth, even their silence becomes a message. This is the paradox of the quiet ones. They are unseen, yet unforgettable. They are still, yet their presence moves mountains. They are detached from validation, yet they become the ones most deeply respected. For in a world addicted to display, authenticity becomes the rarest jewel of all. And when you live from that place, When your minimalism becomes sacred, your confidence internal, and your authenticity your boundary, you no longer need to chase peace. You become it. You no longer need to search for meaning. You embody it. Because the soul was never meant to shout. It was meant to shine. There comes a moment when silence becomes a language of its own. A form of communication deeper than words, stronger than gestures, and purer than the performance of self that most people curate for the eyes of others. When a person stops posting their photos, it is not always because they have disappeared. It's often because they have finally arrived within themselves. In that quiet, inward arrival, something sacred begins to unfold. The discovery of peace that no validation can amplify and no absence can take away. Silence begins as a choice, but eventually it becomes a sanctuary. The one who stops displaying their life to the world isn't trying to hide, they are trying to breathe. They have realized that life in its most genuine essence is not lived in the applause of an audience, but in the intimacy of self-awareness. It is easy to show your face, but it is far more courageous to sit with your soul, to listen to what it says when no one is watching. People often assume that those who stop posting are detached, uninterested, or isolated, but that's only because silence exposes the discomfort others feel when they can no longer read you. There is a certain kind of strength that comes from not needing to be seen to exist. When someone withdraws from the noise, it's not a disappearance, it's an act of purification. They are cleansing themselves of the pressure to perform, the endless chase of approval, the illusion that worth must always be witnessed. When you step out of the spotlight, you begin to see the world differently. The colors of a morning sky, the quiet rhythm of rain, the gentle hum of solitude, they start to speak to you in ways the digital world never could. You begin to see beauty not as something to capture, but as something to experience. There's a sacred stillness in realizing that life is not meant to be documented. It's meant to be lived, felt, and remembered in the private chambers of your heart. When people no longer post their photos, it's not always a statement. It's often a surrender to a higher truth that not every joy needs to be displayed, not every wound needs to be shared, and not every transformation requires witnesses. There is a power in secrecy, in allowing certain parts of your life to bloom away from the eyes of the world. Because the most profound growth often happens in the soil of privacy. Those who no longer seek validation from a lens are not losing connection with the world. They are deepening it. They are learning to exist without needing constant proof of existence. They are learning to feel beautiful without filters, meaningful without metrics, and worthy without applause. This is the quiet rebellion of the awakened soul, the choice to exist authentically, even if it means being unseen. To not post is not to vanish. It is to return, to presence, to essence, to the quiet whisper of the divine within. It is to no longer measure your joy through the eyes of strangers, to no longer outsource your confidence to comments or likes. It is to understand that peace does not come from being known, it comes from being whole. In a world obsessed with exposure, privacy has become a luxury. But to the awakened, it is not a luxury, it is a necessity. For in silence, the soul recalibrates. It remembers who it was before the noise, before the narratives, before the performance of perfection began. To withhold your image is to reclaim your mystery. It is to remind the world and yourself that you are more than what can be seen. There is beauty in being misunderstood by those who still seek meaning through visibility. For your silence will confuse them. Your stillness will unsettle them. They will ask why you no longer share, why you no longer post, why you seem distant. But how can you explain that distance is not disconnection? It is discernment. That stillness is not emptiness, it is fullness. That silence is not withdrawal. It is protection. You protect your peace by not letting everyone have access to your energy. You protect your spirit by choosing sacred spaces over social stages. You protect your growth by letting it happen privately, without the need for validation or the temptation of performance. The one who no longer posts is not rejecting the world, they are redefining their relationship with it. They are learning that real connection happens not through pixels, but through presence. And slowly, they begin to see that the less they share, the more they feel. The quieter they become, the louder life speaks. The less they show, the deeper they see. It's a paradox. The moment you stop trying to be seen is the moment you begin to truly exist, because the truth is, what is sacred cannot always be shared. Some things lose their power when exposed too soon, and some parts of you are meant to be experienced only by you. So, they start to cherish the unseen moments, the soft laughter that echoes through an empty room, the tears no one witnesses, the prayers whispered in the dark. They no longer need the world to validate what is real. For reality, once stripped of performance, is enough. There is beauty in the unrecorded. There is peace in the unposted. And perhaps that's the ultimate freedom. To live without the need to prove you are living. To love without needing to display it. To grow without announcing it. To heal without broadcasting it. When you reach that point, you don't disappear, you transcend. You rise above the need to be visible and begin to live for the quiet joy of being true. This is the transformation of the soul that retreats from the noise of the world. It's not about ego, it's about essence. Not about hiding, it's about honoring. It's about finding the courage to say, I no longer need to be seen because I have finally seen myself. And in that realization, the silence that once felt heavy becomes holy. It becomes a sacred rhythm, like breath, like heartbeat, like prayer. You begin to understand that the greatest form of communication is authenticity, and the greatest form of beauty is peace. So, when you encounter someone who doesn't post their photos, don't mistake their silence for absence. What you are witnessing is presence in its purest form. They are not disconnected. They are deeply connected, just not to the noise. They are not invisible. They have simply become too real to be captured. And maybe that's the invitation for all of us, to step back from the mirror of public gaze and return to the still water within, to remember that we are not reflections but reality itself, to live not to be seen but to see, to feel not to perform but to ubi felte. Because in the end, the soul does not crave attention, it craves alignment, and once it finds that alignment, silence becomes the loudest expression of all. There comes a sacred moment in the quiet journey of self-awareness when you realize that not everyone deserves access to your unfolding. You begin to understand that energy is not infinite, that what you give attention to, you breathe life into. And so, you become more intentional, more selective, not out of pride, but out of peace. When you stop sharing so much of yourself, when you no longer feel the urge to post every moment, it's not that you're becoming distant, it's that you're learning to protect what's precious. Some people cannot comprehend silence because it exposes the depth they have not yet explored within themselves. They need the constant noise of visibility to remind them they exist. But when you begin to evolve inwardly, when your roots go deeper into awareness, the need for display fades like an echo in the mountains. You begin to see that not every flower blooms in the sunlight. Some bloom in the quiet mystery of the night. And so do you. It's in this season of quiet transformation that you begin to experience the world differently. You no longer rush to prove your happiness, you simply live it. You no longer announce your growth, you embody it. And in that embodiment, something beautiful happens. You begin to attract peace instead of attention, depth instead of distraction, and alignment instead of applause. You no longer seek validation from others because you have found something far more valuable, self-recognition. That gentle knowing that who you are is already enough, even when unseen. The beauty of privacy is that it gives your soul room to breathe. In a world constantly asking for evidence of joy, privacy becomes an act of rebellion. You learn to nurture your own light without needing others to witness it. You sit with your thoughts, and instead of posting them, you ponder them. You allow your emotions to move through you without feeling compelled to translate them into captions. In that stillness, you begin to heal, not through visibility, but through presence. The person who steps away from the stage of exposure is not hiding. They are healing. They are remembering what it feels like to be whole without performance. And that remembrance, that sacred inner return, cannot be captured through a screen. It must be lived. It must be felt in the quiet moments when you are both the question and the answer, both the wound and the healing. And yet, this silence can be misunderstood. The world mistakes peace for distance, discernment for coldness, solitude for loneliness. But there is a vast difference between isolation and introspection. Isolation says, I cannot connect. Introspection whispers, I am reconnecting. To withdraw is not to disappear, it is to reorganize your energy. It is to reclaim the pieces of yourself scattered across the noise of approval. When you no longer feel the need to post, you become free in a way the world rarely understands. You realize that real confidence is not loud. It's quiet. It does not announce itself. It radiates softly, like the sunrise through a half-open window. You don't need the world to see you to feel seen, because you have learned to witness yourself with compassion. You begin to honor your own existence in the stillness of your being. There is power in knowing that you can live fully without proof. That your laughter, your love, your growth and your peace are no less real because they are unseen. The unseen moments are, in fact, the most sacred ones. They are where the divine meets the human, where truth reveals itself without filters or validation. These moments, unshared but deeply felt, are the ones that build your foundation. And once you have tasted this kind of depth, it becomes difficult to return to the shallow. The endless scroll, the need for likes, the constant display, they begin to lose their flavor. You no longer crave to be admired, you crave to be understood. You no longer need to be followed, you need to be felt, even if only by yourself. That's the shift, the great awakening of self-awareness. There is something incredibly liberating about not needing to explain your silence. You let people wonder. You let them create their stories while you write your truth in peace. Because the moment you stop explaining yourself is the moment you start experiencing yourself. You begin to see that peace is not found in being known by others, it is found in knowing yourself deeply. You realize that people post not always to express, but often to escape. They post to fill the gaps of attention, to silence the quiet hum of loneliness, to disguise the ache of uncertainty. But when you have faced your loneliness, when you have held your pain without trying to decorate it, you no longer need to escape. You sit with your truth. You let it breathe. You let it be seen by no one but you, and that's enough. In that acceptance, your spirit becomes gentle yet unshakable. You start seeing life as it is, not as it is portrayed. You no longer compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. You no longer measure your joy by public perception. Instead, you begin to live in rhythm with your inner seasons, resting when you need to, blooming when it feels right, and shedding when it's time to release. The greatest transformation happens when you realize that your life is not a performance, it's a prayer. Every breath, every silence, every step is sacred. You no longer post to be remembered, you live to be present. You begin to see that the most beautiful parts of you cannot be captured. They can only be experienced. When you reach this awareness, even your relationship with others changes. You stop chasing attention and start attracting alignment. You no longer need to prove your worth to people who can't perceive your depth. You become comfortable being misunderstood because you understand yourself. That is the quiet confidence of those who no longer perform for the world. They live from a place of truth. And that truth, once discovered, brings peace. Not the kind of peace that depends on circumstances, but the peace that comes from clarity. You realize that nothing external can define or diminish what's internal. The silence that once felt empty now feels full of wisdom, full of awareness, full of divine presence. You begin to understand that privacy is not secrecy, it is sacredness. It is the art of protecting what's growing. When you plant a seed, you don't dig it up every day to show others. It needs darkness to develop roots. The same is true for your spirit. Your silence is not absence, it's incubation. Your unseen moments are not wasted, they are preparation. And so, you begin to cherish the unseen seasons, the quiet evolutions, the moments no one claps for. You realize that you don't need the world to witness your becoming. The becoming itself is the reward. You live with an inner serenity that cannot be disturbed by noise because you have found your rhythm in the silence. Eventually, you look back and realize that you didn't lose anything by withdrawing. You gained everything that truly mattered. You gained peace, clarity, alignment, and self-respect. You gained the ability to exist without proving, to love without showing, and to grow without announcing. You gained your freedom back. And perhaps that's the most profound realization of all, that you never needed the validation of the world to be real. You only needed the courage to be unseen, and the faith to believe that your worth was never dependent on display. Because when the applause fades, when the feed goes silent, when the lights dim, what remains is you. The true you. The unfiltered, unposted, unperformed you. And that version, the one who exists beyond visibility, is the one that finally knows peace. In the end, what we come to realize is that silence was never emptiness, it was truth waiting to be heard. The journey of withdrawing from the noise, of no longer seeking reflection in the digital mirror, was never about hiding from the world. It was about remembering how to be whole within it. When you stop posting every moment, you begin to feel every moment. You begin to live not through the gaze of others, but through the gentle awareness of your own heart. Life becomes quieter, but more vibrant, softer, yet infinitely deeper. You start to see that the beauty of your existence doesn't need to be broadcast. It just needs to be lived. There's a serenity that comes when you realize you owe no explanation for your peace. The silence that once made you anxious becomes your sanctuary. The solitude that once felt heavy becomes your grounding. You discover that your value was never tied to visibility, and that the most powerful form of presence is one that doesn't demand attention. You no longer crave to be known, you crave to know yourself, your purpose, your breath, your truth. And in that knowing, you find something far greater than validation. You find harmony. So, you let the world keep spinning its stories. You let others chase the applause, the spotlight, the constant projection. Because you've learned the greatest secret of all, that the most beautiful souls are not the ones who are always seen, but the ones who are deeply felt. And when you finally sit in that truth, when you feel that deep, quiet alignment between who you are and how you live, you realize you've never been more alive. Even in your silence, you simply become one with peace.